Everyone at the hospital knew her as the quiet, beautiful receptionist who never raised her voice. But what no one knew was that the girl behind the smile didn't always know who she was. Sometimes she woke up with smeared lipstick she didn't remember putting on, texts she didn't remember sending, and secrets she could never tell. Until one night, when everything she had buried came crashing to the surface. Zainab Yusuf was the kind of woman who smiled too much, not out of joy, but survival. Every morning, she walked into the sleek hospital in Lekki with her white uniform perfectly pressed, lips curved just right. Patients thought she was an angel. Nurses said she was the calmest soul they knew. But Zainab had mastered the art of pretending. Behind that smile was a storm. At night, when the world went quiet, she sat in the corner of her small flat, whispering to herself. Sometimes her voice changed. Sometimes she forgot things, conversations, footsteps, even her own reflection. Her sister Tenny was the only one who knew. Tenny had raised her, shielded her, hidden the truth from a world too cruel to understand. No one at the hospital knew that Zainab was constantly battling a mind that split itself just to survive the trauma of her childhood. She wasn't broken, just tired. Tired of pretending, tired of hiding. And yet, every morning, she smiled again. Because in a city that chews people up, a quiet smile was safer than the truth. And Zainab had learned a long time ago, never let them see the fire behind your eyes. Dr. Dapo Martins noticed her on his first day at the hospital. Amid the chaos of patients and nurses rushing through corridors, there she was, Zainab, seated at the front desk, calm like the eye of a storm. Her smile was soft, her eyes unreadable. She reminded him of a rose, beautiful but distant, as if she had built invisible walls no one could climb. He started with little things, a cup of tea on a rainy morning, a joke between files, casual hellos that lingered longer than they should. She always responded politely, sometimes with a laugh, but never let him too close. She kept a line between them, always shifting just enough to keep him curious. One afternoon, he found her alone in the staff lounge, wiping her eyes. "Dust," she said, blinking quickly. But there was no dust. That was when he knew. There was something fragile beneath her surface, something she was trying desperately to hold together. And Dapo, with all his charm and good intentions, made a quiet promise to himself. He would be the one to understand her, to see beyond the smile. But he had no idea what it would cost him. Zainab didn't talk about her childhood, not even to Dapo, not because she didn't trust him, but because she feared what the truth might do to someone who only knew her smile. She was 8 when her mind first broke into pieces. The doctor called it dissociative identity disorder. Trauma so deep, her brain split itself to survive. One half remained Zainab, quiet, gentle, composed. The other? Her name was Anita. Anita wasn't evil. She was Zainab's shield. Loud, flirtatious, fearless. The kind of woman who fought back when life hit too hard. But Anita didn't ask for permission. She came unannounced, leaving Zainab confused, exhausted, and ashamed. Tenny had been her anchor. Her sister dropped out of university to care for her, taught her how to stay invisible, how to blend in, how to smile when the voices came. But even Tenny couldn't control everything. The older they got, the harder it became to keep Anita quiet, especially when Zainab felt overwhelmed, hurt, or loved. Zainab had learned to fear her own mind. Every missed moment, every blank space in time, it reminded her that she wasn't whole. And deep down, she feared that no one could ever love her. Once they knew. It took weeks before Zainab said yes to dinner. Dapo had been patient, never pushy, just present. She liked that about him. So when he asked again, gently, she surprised herself by agreeing. He took her to a quiet rooftop restaurant in Victoria Island. The city lights shimmered like stars beneath them. For the first time in a long while, Zainab let herself laugh. She talked more than usual. Her smile wasn't forced. It felt real. For a moment she forgot the shadows inside her. On the drive home, the illusion shattered. A drunk driver ran a red light, narrowly missing their car. The screeching tires, the jolt, the sudden fear. It triggered something deep within her. Her breathing changed. Her voice dropped. Her posture shifted. Dapo glanced at her. "Zainab?" She turned to him, eyes darker, lips curled in a knowing smirk. "Zainab's not here," she laughed, a sound he had never heard from her. Shaken, he pulled over, watching a stranger in the same body he had grown to care for. By the time he dropped her off, she said nothing, just walked away. The next morning, Zainab woke up confused, with no memory of what had happened. Dapo couldn't sleep. He kept replaying last night in his head. The sudden change, the voice, the look in her eyes. That wasn't Zainab. At least, not the one he knew. He needed answers. At work, he found her behind the reception desk, focused on her files like nothing happened. He asked to speak privately. In the quiet of the staff lounge, he looked into her eyes and said, "What happened last night?" Zainab froze. He told her everything, her words, her tone, the way she touched him like a stranger. Her hands trembled. Tears gathered in her eyes. "I don't remember," she whispered. Then she ran. That evening, Dapo got a knock on his door. Tenny stood there, expression tight, eyes tired. "I know what happened," she said, stepping inside. She told him everything, the trauma, the diagnosis, the alter ego named Anita, how Zainab had split herself to survive what no child should endure, how she had spent years hiding, coping, pretending to be okay. Dapo sat in silence, stunned by the weight of her words. Tenny looked him in the eye. "If you're going to stay, you need to understand, Zainab doesn't need pity, she needs someone who won't run." Zainab returned to work with shaky nerves and a head full of fear. She avoided Dapo, avoided eye contact, avoided herself. But someone else had noticed her strange behavior. Mr. Kunle Okoro, the hospital's HR manager. He had always made her uncomfortable. His eyes lingered too long. His jokes cut too close. Now, with her reputation fragile and whispers beginning to stir, he saw an opportunity. One afternoon, he called her into his office. She walked in, confused but composed. "I've been reviewing CCTV footage," he said slowly, sliding a USB drive across the desk. "You looked different last Thursday. Very different." Zainab's heart dropped. Then came the threat. "Sleep with me," he said coldly, "and I'll make this go away. Refuse, and I'll take this to management. They'll say you're unstable, dangerous. You'll lose your job." Zainab left shaking. That night she told Tenny, who exploded in rage. But Zainab begged her not to act. She didn't want more attention, more damage. In desperation, she agreed to meet Kunle at a hotel. But when he reached for her, Anita surfaced, wild, furious, and unafraid. The next thing Kunle saw was a smashed wine bottle, blood, and a woman walking away with fire in her eyes. News spread fast. Mr. Kunle was in the hospital with a head wound. He told management he'd been attacked by Zainab after he rejected her advances. His version was twisted, but believable. After all, who would believe the quiet receptionist over the respected HR manager? Zainab was suspended immediately pending investigation. No chance to explain. No one asked why she was in a hotel room with him. Only the gossip mattered. She stayed in bed for 2 days, curtains drawn, heart racing. Anita was quiet now, almost protective. Tenny paced the flat like a lion, her phone glued to her ear, making calls to lawyers. Dapo showed up with documents in hand. He'd found online complaints against Kunle, anonymous posts from other women, ignored, buried. But now they had names. One woman agreed to testify. In the internal hearing, Tenny stood beside her sister, fierce as ever. Dapo submitted the evidence. When the hospital's board heard the full story, including Kunle's past misconduct, the tides turned. He was fired. Charges were dropped. But Zainab wasn't relieved. The damage was done. She felt exposed. watched. Every glance at work felt like a quiet accusation. Her secret was out, and the world felt colder. The whispers at work didn't stop. Even though she was cleared, even though Kunla was gone, Zainab felt smaller with each passing day. Some nurses avoided her. Others offered pitiful smiles. Patients glanced too long. Her once peaceful world had shattered. She started forgetting things again, losing time, waking up with makeup she hadn't applied, notes she didn't write. Anita was surfacing more frequently, triggered by shame, fear, and exhaustion. One evening, after a particularly long day of forced smiles and fake strength, she turned off her phone, walked out of the estate, and boarded a bus. She got off at 3rd Mainland Bridge. The air was thick. The lagoon below whispered promises of peace. She stood near the edge, her arms wrapped around herself. Tears streamed down her cheeks. She didn't want to die. She just wanted the noise to stop. The fear, the pretending, the loneliness of not even recognizing your own reflection. Then she heard footsteps. Dapo. He didn't speak, just walked beside her and held her hand. "I don't want to be like this anymore," she whispered. "I know," he said. "But you're still here. That means there's still hope." And they stood there, together, silent but alive. Zainab didn't return to work right away. She needed space, to breathe, to feel, to fall apart safely. For the first time, she allowed herself to unravel. And this time, she didn't do it alone. Dapo stayed, not out of pity, but devotion. He didn't flinch when Anita appeared during their conversations. He didn't panic when Zainab broke down without warning. He listened, he learned. He loved her for all her pieces. Tenny found them a trauma therapist, someone who didn't treat Zainab like a project but a person. Slowly, Zainab started therapy. It was hard, painful. Some days she left shaking, other days numb. But little by little, she began reclaiming her life. She started journaling again, drawing, something she hadn't done in years. Her sketches were raw, women with hollow eyes, girls with fire in their hands. She started attending a support group for women living with mental illness. She even shared, nervously, about Anita. And one day, she came home and told Tenny, "I think I'm ready to stop hiding." Tenny smiled for the first time in weeks. Healing wasn't perfect. It wasn't fast. But it was real. And for the first time, Zainab believed that maybe she could be too. Months passed, and Zainab was no longer just surviving. She was learning to live. Her face, once weighed down by silence, now carried a new kind of strength. The smile she wore these days wasn't a mask. It was earned. She launched a mental health blog, writing about invisible wounds and misunderstood conditions. Her words were honest, painful, and freeing. Other young women began to reach out, saying, "Me too." She realized she wasn't alone. She never had been. When she received an invitation to speak at a women's wellness conference in Abuja, she almost declined. But Dapo encouraged her. Tenny booked her flight. Anita, oddly calm now, said, "Tell them." She stood on stage in a simple gown, the microphone shaking slightly in her hand. The room was silent. "My name is Zainab Yusuf," she began, voice trembling. "And for years, I thought I was broken beyond repair. But I'm not broken. I'm healing. And healing is messy. But it's possible." As she spoke, faces in the audience began to cry, to nod, to stand. She ended with one line. "The bravest thing I ever did was stay alive." And the entire room rose to their feet, clapping through tears. Zainab now lives a quieter life. Not perfect, but peaceful. She runs a small creative studio from her home in Lekki, offering art therapy to young women battling trauma. Dapo still holds her hand like he did that night on the bridge. They're not married yet. She's taking her time. Not because she doubts him, but because she's learning to trust herself again. Tenny finally allowed herself to rest. Her own wounds, buried for so long, are now healing in the gentle light of sisterhood and truth. Anita still exists, but she is no longer feared. She is no longer wild and angry. She is part of Zainab, a protector who helped her survive when she was too young to understand pain. Zainab now sees Anita as her strength, not her shame. Some nights Zainab stands by her window, watching the city lights flicker like stars. She whispers to herself, "We made it!" Because she did. She made it through the fire, the fear, the judgment, and the noise. And in her silence, there is now peace. The end. If this story touched your heart, please share, comment, and subscribe to my channel for more interesting African stories. See you next time, and thanks for watching.